What kind of voice can make strangers cry before they even understand the words? What kind of pain can turn into music so powerful that an entire room forgets how to breathe? Under the bright lights of a stage built for stars, one small figure stood alone. He did not look like someone the world would notice. His name was Mateo Cruz, a thin 13-year-old boy from a quiet coastal village in the Philippines. He was shy, soft-eyed, and carried a nervous stillness, like someone used to being overlooked. Beside the stage curtain, watching with trembling hands, stood Liza, his mother. She was gentle but strong inside, the kind of woman who smiled through exhaustion and never let her child see her fear. Far away in the crowd, unnoticed by them both, sat Mr. Alvarez, a middle-aged music teacher. He had a tired face, a practical mind, and a habit of not expecting miracles anymore. No one in that theater knew how many nights Mateo had slept hungry. No one saw the worn slippers hidden under the stage lights. To the audience, he was just another poor kid with a dream. Another hopeful face in a long line of hopeful faces. Some people smiled politely. Some barely looked up from their phones. The stage was too big for him. The world felt too big for him. But inside his small chest lived something no one could see. A storm of memories, sacrifices, and silent promises made in the dark. Every step that brought him to that stage had been heavy. Every mile behind him was filled with struggle. And now, with thousands watching, a single question floated in the air. Could a boy with nothing but pain in his heart and hope in his voice change the way the world sees him? Or would he walk off that stage the same way he had walked through life, unnoticed, unheard, and forgotten? Mateo Cruz had always been smaller than boys his age. Not just in size, but in the way he moved through the world. He walked quietly, eyes lowered, as if he were afraid to take up too much space. Years of being unnoticed had taught him how to make himself small. His mornings began before the sun touched the sea. He would wake to the soft sound of waves and the rough cough of the old electric fan that barely worked. Their house was made of thin wood and patched metal sheets. When it rained, the roof spoke in loud, uneven drums. Mateo would fold his thin blanket carefully every day. It was a small habit, but it made him feel like he had control over something. He helped his mother carry water from a distant pump. The container was always heavier on the way back, but he never complained. At school, he sat at the back. Not because he could not learn, but because he did not want to be seen. His slippers were worn at the heels. He walked carefully so they would last a little longer. When other kids laughed loudly, he smiled quietly. When they played, he often watched. But there was one place where Mateo did not feel small. That place was inside music. At night, when the village grew quiet, he would sit outside their house and look at the dark sky. He hummed soft melodies he never learned from anyone. Music was where his fear loosened its grip. It was where his chest felt lighter. Still, he carried worry like a shadow. Worry about money. Worry about his mother's tired eyes. Standing backstage now, waiting for his turn, his hands felt cold. His heart beat fast, like a trapped bird. He was not thinking about fame. He was thinking about survival, about hope, about giving his mother one day without fear. For a boy who rarely spoke, his heart was full of words. And soon, the world would hear them, not spoken, but sung. Mateo's life had not always felt this heavy. There was a time when laughter lived easily inside their small home. Before everything changed, his father used to sing while fixing fishing nets. The house once carried warmth, even when money was scarce. But one stormy season took more than boats and roofs. It took the one voice that used to sing beside Mateo's. His father never came back from the sea. And silence settled into their lives like an uninvited guest. After that day, the house felt larger and emptier at the same time. Every corner held a memory that hurt to touch. Mateo watched his mother grow thinner with worry. Her smiles became shorter, her eyes more distant. She began taking any work she could find, washing clothes, cleaning houses, carrying heavy loads. Her hands grew rough, her back often bent in pain. Mateo felt something he did not know how to name. A quiet guilt for being young and unable to fix anything. He stopped asking for small things. Stopped mentioning school trips, snacks, or new slippers. At night, he heard his mother crying softly when she thought he was asleep. Those sounds stayed with him longer than any words. He felt alone in a way that went deeper than being by himself. Alone with responsibility too big for a child. Music became his hiding place. But even there, sadness followed him. Every note he hummed carried loss. Every melody felt like a memory of someone missing. Standing backstage now, the bright stage lights felt far away from the dark days behind him. But the pain had traveled with him. He was not just afraid of singing badly. He was afraid of failing the one person who never gave up on him. If his voice could not change their life, then what could? That question pressed against his heart harder than fear. Mateo had almost not come to the audition. The journey itself had felt impossible. The bus ticket cost more than they could spare. His mother had sold the only small gold ring she owned. Even then, Mateo carried doubt heavier than his small bag. He believed stages like this belonged to other people. But the real turning point had happened weeks before, on a quiet evening. The sky had been orange, and the air smelled of salt and smoke. Mateo had been sitting outside, humming softly as usual. He thought no one was listening. Across the narrow path, an old man had stopped walking. It was Mr. Alvarez, visiting relatives in the village. He had once taught music in a city school. Years of disappointment had made him believe true talent was rare. But that night, he heard something that made him stand still. A raw, trembling voice filled with emotion too deep for a child. Mateo did not sing loudly. Yet the sound carried like a secret the wind refused to keep. Mr. Alvarez felt a quiet shock in his chest. It was not a perfect voice, but it was real. The next day, he found Mateo again. He watched from a distance, listening carefully. In that moment, the old teacher felt something wake up inside him. A belief he thought he had lost. He spoke to Mateo's mother and offered help. Not money, not promises, only guidance. For the first time, someone outside their home said Mateo's voice mattered. Someone looked at him and did not see poverty first. That belief changed the way Mateo stood. Changed the way he breathed before singing. And now, backstage on the biggest stage he had ever seen, he remembered that evening. The sunset, the still air, the first person who truly heard him. It was the moment his life began turning, not when the world saw him. But when he finally believed he was worth being heard. The stage lights poured down like a warm sunrise, yet Mateo felt cold. The vast theater stretched before him like an ocean of faces. For a second, the world seemed too large. His fear rose, heavy and familiar. Then he thought of his mother's hands. Rough, tired, but always gentle when they rested on his head. He thought of the small house that shook during storms. Of nights when hunger was quieter than their worries. He closed his eyes. And let the music carry what words never could. The first note left him softly, almost fragile. But it did not break. It grew. The sound carried pain, love, loss, and hope woven together. It moved through the air like a memory searching for home. The audience grew still. Phones lowered. Eyes lifted. Mateo did not see the crowd anymore. He sang for one person standing behind the curtain. Each note felt like a step across a long, dark bridge. And with every step, the weight inside him grew lighter. His voice trembled, but it did not fall. It rose, filled with everything he had survived. Tears shone in the theater lights. Strangers felt something they could not explain. When the final note faded, silence held the room. A deep, breathless silence. Then the sound came like thunder. Applause crashed, loud and unstoppable. People stood, not because they were told to, but because their hearts had moved before their bodies did. Backstage, his mother covered her mouth, tears slipping through her fingers. Years of fear loosened in a single moment. Mateo stood small under giant lights, yet he no longer felt invisible. For the first time, the world had heard him. And in that roar of applause, a boy who once felt forgotten. Felt seen, held, and finally enough. Some people are born into noise. Others grow up inside silence. Mateo's life had been quiet in the way struggle often is. No headlines. No attention. Just small battles fought every day. Yet the world learned something simple that night. Pain does not always shout, sometimes it sings. The boy on that stage did not carry expensive clothes or perfect training. He carried memories, loss, love, and hope stitched together inside his chest. And that was enough. Many people spend their lives believing they are too small to matter. Too poor. Too ordinary. Too late. Mateo had believed that too. Until one moment proved otherwise. It was not fame that changed his life first. It was belief. One person who listened. One chance taken despite fear. That is how change often begins, quietly. Like a single note before a song. The world can be loud and quick to judge. It looks at shoes, clothes, and backgrounds before it looks at hearts. But music, like kindness, does not see those things. It goes straight to places words cannot reach. Some in that audience went home thinking about their own parents. Some remembered dreams they had buried. Some simply held their loved ones a little tighter. A small boy from a small home had reminded them of something big. That strength is not always loud. Sometimes it lives in tired mothers who never give up. Sometimes in children who carry hope bigger than their fear. And sometimes, the most powerful voices rise from the quietest lives. All they need is one moment. One listener. And the courage to be heard.